Welcome to Building Better Relationships with Chuck and Barb Lewis, equipping listeners and viewers with the biblical tools to conquer the difficulties faced in this life. Chuck has practiced crisis intervention since the 1980s and has been in ministry together with his wife Barb for over 20 years. They've taken the countless lessons and the knowledge they've acquired and have put them into this life skills class to share with you. We hope this blesses you.
Well, hello again. This is Pastor Chuck Lewis.
And I'm Barbara.
And we're excited to be back with you today on this program. And today we're going to be talking about the importance of asking good questions. Questions that really cause the conversation to go somewhere, to open the door for them to have the safety to share with you, and you find out more information about their life. Barb and I went to a wedding one time, and at the reception, there was probably 7 or 8 people sitting at our table. We didn't know any of them, but tell them about what happened with that.
Yeah, Chuck and I hadn't been married very long, and I was an extremely shy person growing up. And I know I was still dealing with that. So at our table, there was an attorney, somebody on the board of education. I think there might have been a judge, and you and I and a few other people, and I just felt so intimidated. I just and because I was shy, I had learned about asking questions, but I still didn't ask them because I felt deficient. And so I thought, if I ask a question, they'll think my question is stupid. Well, it helped me. Yeah. And it's helped me so much in my life to watch Chuck, because he's very good at asking questions. And so he engaged each person around the table in conversation, and he would ask them what they did for a living, how they got into that. And you do see that people do enjoy talking about themselves, and they want to. They want people to care about them and be interested in them. And if we don't ask them questions, how do they know? But I just wanted to, because being shy was a problem that I had, people interpreted that as me being stuck up. And I wasn't. I just didn't know what to say. And so I didn't say anything.
Yeah.
There's that little saying, better to be thought a fool than open your mouth and remove all doubt. I did not open my mouth. And it really helped me to watch Chuck, because it helped me grow in my ability to ask questions. And it helps you feel comfortable in a social situation when you know how to talk to people.
Yes, it really does. And I know a lot of people say, well, if I knew a judge was sitting at my table, I wouldn't know anything of what to say to them. I wouldn't want to ask them anything or whatever. But they're people just like everybody else. And sometimes people in high positions feel very lonely.
Yes.
Because of their position. Right. Nobody talks to them. Yes. They're afraid to say a word to them. But I talk to them because I'm not intimidated by their position. I could talk to anybody now, because I've developed that. And if the president came in, I could talk to the president. I've talked to senators, governors, all kind of different people along the way. And I wasn't intimidated at all. I had the greatest time talking to them, because we were talking about real things. And I had a senator tell me one time, I forget who it was, but he said, I love to talk to you because you love to talk about real things. And I said, well, yeah, I do. I really enjoy doing that. And we had the greatest time together. But see, if my self-talk would have been, I can't ask that, or I can't bring that up, or I can't, do that. Well, then that just shuts me down. And if they're shut down because they're waiting for people to engage, then nobody says anything. It's not asking inappropriate questions. Right. It's just asking questions that invite more conversation. Right. And that's true in our families as well. because people can go out to eat as a family and nobody's saying a word. They're all on their iPhones or their iPads or whatever.
Right.
And they're I've heard about a couple not long ago that was sitting at a table. This is a true story. And they were texting each other as they were sitting at that table. And they're right there, but they're texting each other. Wow, that's so incredible.
I think it's good that you brought that up because I think technology is the reason people don't know how
Yeah.
to talk to each other anymore. It's
Yes.
because of our phones and because of video games and computers. We aren't engaging with a person, we're engaging with our technology. And people get so they don't know how to engage or have a conversation. It's too uncomfortable. And so they just become lonely and isolated.
You're right.
And I think having a voice is the primary way that we are created in God's image.
Mm-hmm.
And He wants us to use that voice to build relationship because we are created to be in relationship, not in isolation. We do not heal in isolation, we heal in relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we have them, by talking to each
Yeah,
other.
absolutely.
In fact,
Absolutely.
should we tell them about the tennis match?
Yes, let's do. Why don't you tell them about that? That's so good.
Okay. Conversation is like a tennis match. You hit the ball to the other person by asking them a question that can't be answered with yes or no. And they hit the ball back to you, hopefully by answering your question and asking you a question. And then you hit the ball back again by asking them another question. And you can get a little deeper each time you hit the ball back to them, so that the conversation continues to get more deeper and more involved, learning more about each other.
Right, right. And think in advance, like if you know that you're going to be meeting with somebody,
Yes.
think about in advance some questions that you can ask them.
Yes.
And these are not inappropriate questions, but just questions that will find out about their life. What kind of work do you do? How long have you been doing that? Do you enjoy working there? What got you started working there? I asked a guy one time, I said, I notice that you don't ask a lot of questions. In fact, I don't know that I've heard you ask one question since we've been meeting, and we probably met 6 or 7 times. And I said, why don't you think you don't ask questions? And he said, because I don't care about anybody else but me. I said,
That's
really?
sad.
Oh, gosh, why don't you tell me how you really feel? So anyway, we need to ask the Lord to help us care about other people. And like when I went on my first date with Barb, I thought about questions that afternoon that I could ask her that would just open the door to more conversation. And again, I wasn't going to ask her how much money do you have in your checking account or any personal questions like that, but just what do you do for a living? How did you get in that job? What did you do before that? Boy, you can ask questions like what's the funnest place that you've ever traveled to and what did you do on that trip? Again, you could be maybe thinking right now, well, I could ask that, but I don't care about that. I don't care about their trip. I'll tell them about my trip. I'll tell them what happened to me one time when I went to some place. But it's again like Barb's example of the tennis game. If you serve the ball all the time and the person doesn't hit that ball back, that game gets very boring.
Yes.
But it also gets boring if you're the dominator
Yes.
and you're the one telling them all about your life, but you don't ask anything about their life.
Right, right. They might run when they see you next time if you talk during the whole entire conversation and don't ask anything about them. And that's just such a self-focus, and I really hate to even admit it, but when I was feeling too bad about myself to ask somebody questions, I realized that also is a self-focus. It's not focusing on and caring about the other person. And So I like what you said about asking the Lord to help you care about other people. But I think another thing that can keep people from asking questions is an example. We don't maybe see our parents do it, or because I think kids are little imitators and they learn by what they see. And we have some friends that are very good conversationalists, and their little girl, when she was 5 or 6 years old, we had been over at their house and we were getting ready to leave, and she said, "Mr. Lewis, when am I going to see you again?" Because that's something she had heard her parents say, but she knew to ask a question.
Yeah,
And I really thought that was pretty sweet.
that was sweet. Well, I've heard it said too that people don't really care about how much you know until they know how much you really care. And that is so true, because if you don't care about other people, maybe you've been hurt in your life and you've just lived your life in survival. Survival will cause you to not have any questions to ask,
That's true.
because no questions come to your mind.
That's a good point.
You're not thinking about them at all, because your complete focus is on trying to help yourself and heal yourself. And a lot of times people don't know what to do to help and heal themselves, so they're just real quiet.
And sometimes we don't realize that reaching out to other people will help us heal. I read about a man that was really struggling with depression, and a lady across the street was just got home and was having problems getting her groceries into the house. And she asked him to help her, and he went over there and helped her. And he noticed how much better he felt after he had done something for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided each day he was going to do something for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And he was amazed at the end of 2 weeks how much less depressed he was.
Yes.
Because he had been reaching beyond himself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Sometimes we have to give what we need.
Yes.
And you think, well, when I get my needs met, then I can give what I need. But it starts out by faith, by giving something to somebody that you're desperately needing yourself. The Bible said if you give a cup of cold water in the name of the Lord, it will not lose its reward. Well, you think, gosh, what's the significance in a cup of water? That's very insignificant, but it's not to somebody dying of thirst.
Right. And that's what the Lord told you to do when you had your spinal cord injury and you were in the hospital.
Yes.
And you cried out to the Lord. You said, "Lord, what should I do? What can I do now?" And he told you to encourage hurting people.
Yes.
And you're thinking, well, aren't I a hurting person?
That's right. Yeah.
But he told you, I think that's in Matthew. It's the golden rule. Do unto others what you would have them do unto you. And in the Amplified, it's do to and for others what you would like them to do to and for you. And so if you want people to be interested in you and ask about you and want to be with you, then you give that first. And sowing seed.
I remember exactly what you're saying, of how I prayed, and I'm in the hospital after getting in that car accident. I couldn't do anything. I'm in traction. And I said, "Lord, what do you want me to do now? I can't do anything. I've lost everything, and I've lost my health." And man, I was just having myself a big pity party there. And I said, "What do you want me to do?" And he said, he didn't say it in an audible voice, but it was down in my spirit. And I knew it was from God. And he said, "I want you to give what you need." And I didn't feel like it. And I said, "Is there anybody else up there?" Because I didn't like that answer. But God knew that if I gave what I needed, a sacrificial offering, basically, at that moment, that he would give me back what I desperately needed. So I gave to other people, and I would ask God to give me the questions to ask them. And because I prayed one time and I said, "Lord, I don't have the answers." And I felt like he said, "You don't even have the questions." So I started asking him for the questions. And it's amazing. You're saying to me all the time, how do you come up with all these questions?
He's got really good questions.
And I said, well,
But he's a counselor.
you can look to the Holy Spirit for that, because the Holy Spirit's the one that gave me the questions. But I would ask them the kind of questions that I would have liked to have somebody ask me. And that's how I got started.
Yeah, there's a verse in Proverbs, and it says, "A man's thoughts are deep waters, but a man of understanding can draw them out."
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that really does describe you, and I want it to describe me too, because I want to draw out of people the deep waters, the things that need to be talked about.
I've talked to a lot of men in my ministry, and there's a lot of men that just don't have a lot of words, and it's hard for a lot of men to talk. And I remember about two guys going fishing together, and they started out at 6 o'clock in the morning in a boat, and they didn't say one word to each other from 6 in the morning till 11 that morning. And finally, 11 o'clock came, and the one fisherman said to the other, "Well, they sure don't seem to be biting much today." And the other fisherman said, "Nope, sure doesn't look like it." And that's all they said. And they went home that night, and their wives said, "How was fishing?" "Oh, it was great. We talked all day." So some men don't need a lot of words, but it's developing, the thoughts of what I will do a lot of times also is I'll hear somebody else ask a question, and that question resonates with me. So I'll write that down. I'll put it on my phone or whatever, and just put it in notes, and then I'll go back to that. I'll start a whole page of notes of good questions to ask, and then I'll bring that up when I'm going to talk to somebody that is not used to talking to me.
Yeah, you can even Google that, I've noticed. And if you're going to go on a date with someone, you can Google good questions to ask on a date. And a date's going to be a lot more interesting when you have conversation back and forth than if you just sit there and don't learn anything about each other. You
Right.
want to learn things about each other.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's really hard if you're the one talking the whole time and the other person's not talking at all. I mean, I had lunch with a guy that I asked him every question that I could think of, and he answered the questions, but he never asked me anything. Never asked me one thing about how's the ministry going, how's your life work going, what's going on with you, how's your health been. Nothing. There was not one question at all. So basically, I asked everything I could ask, and then we sat the rest of the time just basically eating and not saying a word, because I couldn't think of one other question to ask, and because he just wasn't hitting the ball back, the tennis ball like you.
Yeah, and we see that with couples at restaurants too.
Oh, yeah.
Nobody's talking.
Yeah.
So I think it's learning to talk to each other. Maybe starting out with a compliment of your spouse and then asking them a question.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. Of instead of saying the things that are wrong with you, is starting out by saying, "Well, let me tell you what's right with you." Boy, that would be a shocker, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'd be going, "Tell me more."
Tell
Is
me
there more about that?
Yeah, really. Please tell me more about that. Because we're quick to point out what's wrong, but we can also be quick to point out what's right. There's so much more right with us than what's wrong.
Right.
I mean, I love being married to Barb. I love the life that we have together. We truly are. She truly is my best friend, and I hope
feel the same.
that I am too. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. But that makes such a difference. It really does. Because if you enjoy each other, and if you really really ask questions, keep the conversation going, it doesn't always have to be a problem. It doesn't always have to be something that's not working. It can just be talking about life and talking about the Lord, and talking about, I mean, just the question, what do you think eternity's like? What do you think we'll be doing in heaven? What kind of jobs do you think we're going to have in heaven? What's our mission in heaven? I mean, that can just go on and on and on. You could talk for days about stuff like that. And that's called fellowship.
Yes.
And you can have fellowship with your family, just like you can have fellowship with people at church.
Yeah, in fact, I think it's important to have fun conversations too, not have all your conversations be dealing with issues. So if couples do that, they need to set aside time, like a date night. We're not going to talk about problems.
Yes.
We're just going to talk about fun things.
Fun things. Well, if you're listening today and this has been helpful, write your comments under this program and we read them and we'll address them. If there's anything you have a question about today's topic, we would love to hear from you.
Like
God bless you.
Subscribe, and then you'll get notified when you have more videos.
You subscribe and hit the bell. Is that the way you do it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We'd love to be with you. Love to hear from you. God bless you. We'll talk to you next time.
If you are blessed by this ministry, please subscribe, like, and share. You can also make donations at chucklewisministries.com. Join us to keep uncovering the tools to build better relationships together. Let's do this again next week.